Hi, I'm Daniel Berger. Welcome back to AIM Truthcast. We're going to be looking at the second part of the Biblical Sluggard, 10 Things in Proverbs. Hope you'll join us. Hi, thanks for joining us for this second part of the Biblical Sluggard or sloth. I want to begin here with the sixth thing that Proverbs talks about concerning the sluggard, and that is he is unreliable in completing tasks, and so it frustrates those that send him or commission him. Proverbs 10:26 is one of the verses that describes this unfortunate reality of human nature. Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. Just like getting smoke in your eyes or having vinegar put on your teeth, you're gonna pull back. You're gonna recoil with disdain, with disgust, because what you hoped would be accomplished, what you hoped would be said, that person didn't fulfill what they were told to do, what they were sent to do. And again, this goes back to this idea of starting things but not finishing those things. It's important that we understand a sluggard is not just somebody who lays on a bed all day. They do things, but it frustrates people because they don't finish the task that is before them. Remember from the last video, finish the job. Well, this is another case in point of that. But the person who's in relationship with the sluggard will be frustrated. You can guarantee there's going to be marriage problems if the sluggard is in that marriage. You can guarantee that if they hold a position or a job, that the people over them are going to be frustrated with them because tasks are not getting done. Proverbs 18 and verse 9 also reiterates this truth. Whoever is slack in his work is a brother to him who destroys. Now, even though Proverbs 18 and verse 9 is not saying a slacker or a sloth or a sluggard, they are referring to the behavior that gets someone labeled, if you would, as a slacker, as a slothful person. Whoever is slack in his work will be brother to him who destroys. So the truism here is that just like somebody comes along and kicks down what you just built, they light on fire the house that you begin to build, the brother of that person, the destructive person, is the person who doesn't do what they're supposed to do. They are slackful in getting things done. They will cost you a lot of money, just like somebody who destroys. They will cost you a lot of frustration. They will set you back. And so that needs to be taken into account when someone is going to be hired who is a slacker. This is the natural man. Only through knowledge, someone who is discerning and who is diligent in their work, that's someone to hire. Moving on to the seventh point of the book of Proverbs in regard to a slacker or a sluggard. The sluggard justifies his character and behavior by having a very high opinion of himself. He thinks that he is doing the best work. He thinks that he's top of his class. He thinks that he is smarter than mom and dad. He is smarter than everybody. In fact, that's why he doesn't do his work. And that's why he's bored. And he'll tell you that. If I was just challenged, then I would do what I'm supposed to do. And even when he is acting on his own desires, he convinces everyone that he's just bigger than even his own desires. He stays home and he does what he wants to do, and he'll play video games all day. Whatever it is, he is content. Well, we see this in Proverbs 26:16. The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. It doesn't matter what he says. You can't argue with this guy. You will never get past his desires and his high opinion of himself. Don't confuse him with truth. Do not dare confuse him with truth, because ultimately he is the truth. He's made himself in his eyes to be wiser than everyone. He is the standard of truth. He is the source of truth. This is a dangerous place to be, of course, and it is characteristic. It's a description of the natural fool. And that's why I want to keep reiterating this reality that the sluggard is not some abnormality, some monster, some alien figure. He is actually part or highlights normalcy. You and I are struggling with pride. Everybody is struggling with pride. It is something we struggle with immediately in Romans chapter 12. After we are to submit our bodies as a living sacrifice. The Bible says the first step in doing that is to begin to take our thoughts captive and renew our minds, not be conformed to the world. That first step is, in fact, not thinking too highly of ourselves than we ought to. So the sluggard is just following the normalcy of his heart. It's where his heart will take him. We'll have a high opinion of ourselves, and therefore we will be a sluggard. They go hand in hand. Pride and being a sluggard go hand in hand. We move on to the 8th characteristic of a sluggard in the book of Proverbs, and that is that the sluggard may desire to lead, but his character places a ceiling over his head. He's doing this to himself. He wants to be a leader. He wants to be the president. He wants to be the CEO. He wants to be a pastor. He wants to be a husband that leads. And yet, he puts a ceiling over his own head. Look with me at Proverbs 12 and verse 24 to see this truth. The hand of the diligent will rule, while the slothful will be put to forced labor. It's an unfortunate reality, but it's a consequence of his own choices. He thinks higher than anyone else, and ironically, this frustrates him, and so often he'll struggle with depression and anxiety because he sees himself as a CEO, but he's just not there. He's not willing to do the simple things and to walk the path, the day-to-day effort. He wants to jump right away because why not? He's already qualified above everyone else. He knows more than everyone else. He is completely full of himself, and yet what he finds himself doing is forced labor consistently. We see this so often in our society. Really brilliant people who can't even hold a job, and when they do get a job, it's minimum wage. And yet, if they really submitted to the will of God and understood the value of gaining the knowledge of the Holy One and living that out and not being a sloth, they could genuinely end up as a CEO, as the president, as fill in the blank. The sluggard has a grandiose, delusional idea of himself. And yet, ironically, he really could advance and be successful at what he wants to do, but his own desires are keeping him from these types of desires. We also see in Proverbs that the sluggard is characterized by not getting up when it is necessary and appropriate. So this is often where people go immediately to when they consider the sloth or the slacker or the sluggard. We think, somebody just stays in bed all day. It's actually not just sleeping, but here is the probably most famous characteristic of a slothful person, and that is Proverbs 24, verse 33 through 34. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. Now we're going to come back to this verse, but first I just want to highlight Proverbs 6:9 as well. How long will you lie there, O sluggard? Will you arise from your sleep? If we were on Family Feud and asked, what is characteristic of a sluggard? This would likely be the number one choice that people would choose. But I want you to again notice when you couple Proverbs 6:9 with 24:33 through 34, you have this idea that not only will it yield poverty to do that, but want is driving this. It's what he wants to do. I don't feel like getting out of bed today, so I'm not going to get out of bed. I feel like looking at pornography, so I'm going to look at pornography. I feel like not going into work today, so I'm not going to go into work today. I feel like eating the entire 5 gallons of ice cream that is before me and not eating healthy food, so that's what I'm going to do today. And so the sluggard may end up an adulterer. The sluggard often ends up a glutton because he's acting according to what he wants. And the sad thing about this is he doesn't get ultimately what he really wants. He gets more want. His reward is the emptiness, the unsatisfied life. Getting out of bed and putting one foot in front of the other is the first step, if you would, in denying the desires. Listen, I'm telling you right now, there's more days than not that I don't want to get out of bed at 5:30 or 5 in the morning. I don't want to get up. I don't feel like getting up. Prudence doesn't act according to feeling. As we saw from Proverbs 13:16, it acts according to knowledge. All of us have to deny our fleshly desires, our physical desires to stay in bed, our mental desires, our spiritual desires that draw us away from God, that when they conceive, bring forth sin, as James 1 says. We have strong desires that have to be denied because our flesh tells us if we get our desires, we'll be satisfied, but what we end up with is more desire. And that's where addiction comes from. If you study Proverbs chapter 5 as an example, even looking at the end there, verse 22, we are left with our desires that entrap us. They only get stronger. They don't get fulfilled, they get stronger, and they drive us further into laziness or being a sluggard. And that leaves us with our last characteristic that we find in Proverbs of the slacker or the sluggard or the sloth. We find this in Proverbs 24 and verse 30 through 32. States, I passed by the field of a sluggard, by the vineyard of a man lacking sense. It was all overgrown with thorns, and the ground was covered with nettles, and its stone walls were broken down. And then I saw, and I considered it, and I looked, and I received instruction. Now I've highlighted this, I've emphasized this. This is the Hebrew word musar, or the equivalent in the New Testament of paideia. It's the word discipline. I looked and received discipline. Now you can go back to previous videos, specifically my book, Discipling a Fool's Heart, where the entire crux of that book is discussing what this means. What does discipline, what does it mean to be a disciple? What does discipleship look like, whether it's parenting or whether it's in the church? That is this word musar, the idea of instructing someone in the way that they should go. It's fascinating here because here is the answer to being a sluggard. And that's our 10th point today. The solution to being a natural sluggard is biblical discipline. Now, what's interesting in this case is the father has an excursion for his son. He's got a field trip to show his son what a sluggard looks like. And so they pass by and they see a vineyard that a sluggard owns. It is a mess. It's likely a very valuable piece of property because they're passing by it. It likely was in a very prominent place that people naturally pass by. And what the son notices is it's overgrown, it has thorns, it's covered with nettles, and the structures are actually broken down. It's of no value in the shape that it is. And so what does the son do? He says, hey, I don't need to experience being a sluggard. I can actually learn from this other guy, this sluggard's problems. It's clear that he's not taking care of what he has. And so he's lost the value. So I want to listen to the very discipline that's being given to me so that I don't head down the same path. I want to encourage you today that the answer to impulsivity, the answer to not being successful, to being lazy, to being hasty, on and on it goes, is biblical discipline. It goes back to the plan that God has put in place, that we give our attention, that we receive knowledge specifically of the Holy One, that we understand and grab that, and that we become prudent and apply these truths and live them out in our life, and that becomes permanent in our hearts. I'd encourage you to look at those 5 elements from the previous videos that we've done. And if you want further study on those, you can look at my book, The Discipling a Fool's Heart, as well as the second edition of Teaching a Child to Pay Attention. Those books are wed together. They go hand in hand. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you, not just in discipleship and not just in parenting, but in understanding your own struggles. Let's all work towards acting according to knowledge and being prudent and making this a permanent part of our character so that we are not sluggards, so that we do not live unsatisfied, so that we do not live as we're walking through thorns, as we live in poverty, as we live with useless things and broken relationships and people frustrated with us. In fact, if those are issues in your life, or maybe they're issues in someone you're counseling, you may want to consider this root heart problem that Proverbs calls sluggard, sloth, or slackard. May God give you grace and peace and open your eyes to His truth. May the truth genuinely set us free. Have a wonderful day.